I've always been a nature lover. Growing up near the mountains, hiking became a regular part of my life. For me, it's where I find peace, away from the chaos of the city, the hum of electronics, and the constant noise of people. It's just me, the trees, and the open sky. There's a trail I used to hike a lot, one that wasn't on any maps. It was a local secret, passed down by word of mouth. This trail led deep into the forest, far from the well-worn paths. Most hikers avoided it because it was isolated, dense, and a bit too wild for the average person. But for me, that was the allure. One Saturday morning, I decided to head out early, aiming to spend the entire day on that trail. I packed my gear, brought enough food and water, and by 6 a.m., I was on my way. The air was crisp, the sun just peeking over the mountains, casting long shadows through the trees. It was perfect. For the first few hours, everything was normal. The deeper I went, the quieter it became, the only sound being the crunch of leaves under my boots and the occasional bird overhead. I hadn't seen another person since I left the main trail, and that was exactly how I liked it. Around noon, I decided to take a break. I found a small clearing, sat down, and pulled out my lunch. As I ate, I noticed something strange, a slight shift in the atmosphere. It's hard to describe, but the air felt heavier. The sounds of the forest seemed muted, like everything around me was holding its breath. I shrugged it off, figuring it was just the isolation messing with my head. I packed up my stuff and kept moving. About an hour later, I started to get the distinct feeling I wasn't alone. You know that sensation when you can just feel eyes on you? That's what it was like. I stopped in my tracks, listening intently. There was no sound, no footsteps, no rustling in the bushes. Just the overwhelming sensation that someone, or something, was watching me. I looked around, but saw nothing unusual. The trees were thick, and the sunlight barely filtered through the canopy, casting deep shadows across the forest floor. I was alone, or so I told myself. I kept walking, but now, every step felt heavy, like the forest was closing in on me. The feeling of being watched wouldn't go away, and the deeper I went, the worse it got. It was around 2 p.m. when I stumbled upon something that made me stop dead in my tracks. It was a cabin. I'd been hiking this trail for years, and never once had I seen any sign of human life out here. There weren't supposed to be any buildings this far into the forest, but there it was, standing in a small clearing like it had been there for decades. The wood was old and rotting, the roof sagging under the weight of moss and vines. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to it. Against my better judgment, I moved closer. The windows were filthy, caked with dirt and grime, making it impossible to see inside. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking with the slightest breeze. I should have turned around. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I stepped inside. The air was thick and musty, like the place had been abandoned for years. The wooden floor groaned under my weight, and the walls were covered in strange markings, symbols I didn't recognize. It looked like someone had scrawled them with charcoal, rough and jagged lines that made me uneasy. The room was empty, except for a small table in the center. On it was a single object, an old, rusted key. Something about it felt off. I couldn't explain it, but the key felt wrong, like it didn't belong there. Suddenly, I heard a noise from outside, rustling in the bushes, followed by what sounded like faint whispering. My heart raced. I turned toward the door, ready to bolt, but then something else caught my eye. On the far wall, just above the doorframe, was a mirror. It hadn't been there when I walked in. I was sure of it. It was small, cracked in several places, the glass cloudy with age. But what sent chills down my spine was what I saw in its reflection. There was someone standing behind me. I whipped around, but the cabin was empty. I looked back at the mirror, and the figure was still there, standing just a few feet behind me. It was tall, impossibly tall, with long limbs and a head that was slightly cocked to one side, as if it were studying me. My breath caught in my throat, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in that moment, staring at the reflection of something that shouldn't exist. Then, it spoke, not with words, but with thoughts. I could feel its voice in my mind, cold and dark. "You're not supposed to be here." That broke whatever trance I was in. I ran. I didn't look back. I burst through the door, sprinting through the forest as fast as my legs could carry me. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the trees, and I could feel it following me. I didn't hear footsteps, but I knew it was there, just out of sight, watching me, hunting me. I didn't stop until I reached my car, hours later. My legs were shaking, my lungs burning, but I didn't care. I jumped in, started the engine, and sped out of there, leaving the trail behind. I haven't been back since. I don't even hike anymore, but sometimes, late at night, I can still hear it. The whispering, the creaking of old wood. And when I close my eyes, I see the mirror and the figure standing behind me, watching, waiting.